Welcome, Mr. Speaker. Great to have you.
Hey, Megyn, great to be with you. I'm a big, longtime fan, and I enjoyed being interviewed on the TV show many years ago. So glad to be back. It's fantastic.
Oh, I appreciate it. Likewise, you've been doing a great job, and it's been fun to watch you in the new position. One of the few men in America who could actually bring together these various factions within the Republican Party and not get ousted within 10 days of becoming Speaker. So hats off to you, sir. Okay, so this is it. I mean, I think Mark Halpern's right. Like Trump, he needs this to go through, but the Republican Party is still infighting. One of the big sticking points, we're told, is cuts to Medicaid, a rollback of some of those who would be covered by Medicaid. The Democrats ready to make hay out of that, saying the evil Republicans gave tax breaks to the rich, even though you're giving tax breaks in this bill to everyone. But they'll point out the rich at the expense of poor people's health care. And to this, you say what?
Those are tired, old talking points, and they don't work because it does not comport with the facts here. This bill, the one big, beautiful bill, is all of the Trump agenda, all the America First agenda wrapped into one big piece of legislation. So it is aptly named, as the president named it, and we are going to deliver this product for the American people. It fulfills all of our campaign promises and all the things the president said on the campaign trail last year. This is the way to get it done. Real quickly, Megyn, everybody needs to understand why we're using the budget reconciliation process. People get caught up in all the funny terms we use on Capitol Hill, but this is the only mechanism we have to avoid the 60 vote threshold in the Senate. Most substantive legislation, as you know, has to be able to defeat a filibuster and gather, in this case, 7 Democrats to join in. They have no interest in the America First Trump agenda, obviously. So we're using the budget reconciliation process, reconciling the budget in order to squeeze all these big initiatives in. So it's everything. It's historic spending cuts, historic tax cuts, border security, the largest investment in a generation. We're going to restore American energy dominance, and we're going to save these critical programs like Medicaid for the people who desperately need and deserve it. It has been expanded beyond belief. There's fraud.
Yeah, explain what happened in Medicaid, because it's very nice to say, oh, well, we want to cover poor people. Don't be so nasty and mean. We do cover poor people in this country. They actually do have healthcare coverage, but the system has been exploited and taken advantage of. And it seems to me that's what you guys are trying to get at here.
100%. What we are doing is restoring common sense to the programs in order to preserve them, because Medicaid is intended to be a temporary safety net for people who desperately need it. You're talking about the elderly, disabled, young, single, pregnant moms who are down on their luck, right? But it's not being used for those purposes because it's been expanded under the last 2 Democrat presidents and to cover everybody. So you got a bunch of able-bodied young men, for example, who are on Medicaid and not working. So what we're doing is restoring work requirements to Medicaid. Okay, this is common sense. It's about an 85% approval rating in public polling because it makes sense. If you are on the public wagon, you need to help pull it. And Megyn, all we've done in the bill is add 20 hours a week, okay, a requirement to work for 20 hours a week or be in a job training program looking for a job, or volunteer in your community. I mean, that's good for the individual. It's good for the community that they live in. We find dignity in our work. And I can go in any town hall in any district in America and explain what we're doing. And every single person at the end of the day, unless they're a crazed socialist, radical leftist like the guy who just got the Democrat nomination for mayor in New York, everybody nods their head and goes, well, yes, of course we should do that. So that's what we're doing. And by doing that, you eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse of the programs, and you preserve it. You sustain it for the people who desperately need it.
Okay, so here's what's happening, though. Notwithstanding, and there's a lot to like about this bill, the permanent tax cuts for everybody. People should know that the Trump tax cuts went up and down the board. They helped poor people all the way through to rich people who are the job creators. So we shouldn't be against tax cuts for the rich because those are your bosses and we want them hiring more people. However, the polls show, and this matters, while Republicans are ready to get behind this, Republican voters, Democrats hate it. And more importantly, independents hate it. The numbers are not good, and they need to be good because you guys are going to lose control of the House if the independents turn on you. Okay, so here's the latest Fox News poll. Overall, 38% favor this thing, 59% oppose it. If you break that down by party, Republicans, only 23% oppose. 89% of Dems oppose, not a surprise. 73% of independents oppose. Same basic numbers from Quinnipiac and others. Here's Harry Enton, CNN's data guy, laying out sort of the stakes and how it looks in the polling. Sat one.
The amount of disapproval for this bill, holy cow, my goodness gracious. And, you mentioned the KFF poll. We're talking about 29 points underwater on the net favorable rating. But that matches the Quinnipiac University poll from last week when it was 26 points underwater. Oh, my God, you need Greg Louganis to get that far underwater. And, we're talking about a negative 41 net favorability rating among independents in the center of the electorate. You rarely ever see pieces of legislation or proposed pieces of legislation as unpopular as this. But here you see it in two polls. There is a large chunk of the Republican Party that is not in favor of this bill. So this is the GOP with an unfavorable view of this bill. And what we see here is, look at this, 23% are opposed, have an unfavorable rating of the big, beautiful bill. So if this is the big, beautiful bill, it may be a big, beautiful bill for Democrats if it passes, because they'll have a big, beautiful night come midterm night of 2026.
What do you make of that sentiment, Mr. Speaker?
You can dismiss every single bit of that. Why? Because the reason it's unpopular, people don't dislike the bill. They dislike what they've been told about the bill by Democrats and mainstream media. The beauty of doing this so early, Megyn, and the difference between what we did in the first Trump administration in 2017, I was a freshman in Congress at that time, is we waited until the end of that first year of his term to get the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act done. That thing was rocket fuel for U.S. economy. We brought about the greatest economy in the history of the world with our tax cuts and regulatory reform. The problem is we did it too late in the cycle. And so people didn't feel those positive effects before we got to the midterm. We lost the majority in that case. We're not doing that this time. The reason we put this on such an aggressive timetable is because we knew the Democrats were going to go out and lie about it. Of course, they have no policy, no platform to run on themselves. All they can do is pan our work. And they do it with the help of the mainstream media. So we're doing this early enough, Megyn. Here's the key. We get this thing signed by Independence Day, which is our goal. Everybody will feel the effects of this bill, the positive effects of this bill, before they go vote in the midterms. We are going to win the midterms and grow the majority because people are going to feel the effects. As I mentioned, in that first Trump administration, we had the greatest economy in the history of the world. Job participation rate was at an all-time high, poverty at an all-time low, wages rising for every demographic in America. We're going to do that again, but this time on steroids, because this is a larger bill with more of those pro-growth policies, and everyone will feel it. We're excited. The proof will be in the pudding. We can't wait to put it out there.
Mm-hmm. If the economy is humming in the way it was under Trump 1.0, people will not believe the lies that are being told about this legislation, like all the people who are going to die, according to Hakeem Jeffries. On the Medicaid cuts, though, one thing that did catch my eye for Republican voters is the nonprofit health consumer advocacy organization Families USA says that the Medicaid cuts could lead to more hospital closures, especially in rural areas. And this was an issue, as you know, Republicans in the Senate have raised this for a long time, too. Like they're worried. Republicans in general have been a little worried about medical facilities in rural states. Like we've got property in Montana, places like that where it's tough to get medical care. And they are estimating that as a result of these Medicaid cuts, 55 additional independent rural hospitals across 26 states could experience negative net incomes, leaving a total of 380 independent rural hospitals nationwide at serious risk of closure. That's the kind of thing that could come back to bite you in the next couple of years before the midterms. What do you make of this problem?
We're handling that. Look, I've got a rural district in Louisiana. I have a couple of large areas and a lot of rural areas. So the rural hospitals are an essential lifeline to people all across this country. We're going to protect those rural hospitals. There were some proposals on the table to change the funding formulas, basically under Medicaid, not to get too deep in the weeds. But I don't think that's going to be part of the final bill. A lot of that discussion had been held in the Senate. We did not insert that in the House product that we sent over because we wanted to ensure no cuts to Medicaid. Remember, President Trump said that over and over and over, and we did as well. So what's going to happen here is that if they implement any of that, if any of the formula changes make it their way into the final bill, which I don't think they will, there will be a supplemental piece of the legislation in the reconciliation bill itself that provides an additional account to prop up the rural hospitals. Putting this in layman's terms, that's what will happen. There will be no net negative effect. We're going to protect it. Okay.
There's a Fox News article today pointing out that there still are major differences between the House and the Senate. And I'm speaking here of Republicans who control both bodies for now. That the Senate seems to be doing some stuff that's just not going to fly in the House, and that you need agreement on it, including the Senate's decision to defer the expiration of some of these green energy tax credits that Biden's Inflation Reduction Act gave them. So Republicans in the Senate want to keep some of those in place because depending on what state they're from, they may like them. And this seems to be a hard no for the House. So how's that going to get reconciled?
We'll resolve it like we do everything else. We really have had a one-team approach on this. I mean, we have small margins, historically small margins in the House and the Senate. We can only spare 3 votes in each chamber. And so Leader Thune and I have been, joined at the hip on this thing. And we've been navigating this through the House for over 14 months. Megyn, we began this process in March of last year, knowing and believing that we would have unified government. We would have this historic moment where we had the White House and the Senate and the House, and we knew we wanted to use the reconciliation process to deliver the agenda. So a lot of thought and deliberations going into this. We're in the final hours of that negotiation, and you'll hear lots of rumor and consternation. And of course, the media and the Democrats are trying to divide Republicans, chamber versus chamber, and Republican versus Republican in each chamber. We're not having any of that. So look, there's a lot of thoughtful ideas on the table. We have broad conferences. They're very diverse, very different districts represented here and lots of different opinions. But at the end of the day, I think we're going to come up with a conclusion that checks all the boxes. Look, on the IRA, the big Green New Deal, subsidies and credits and all that, there's an appetite amongst all Republicans generally to get rid of all of that. But to your point, there are some states and some districts where there's a lot of jobs being provided initially, for example, for wind and solar, right? So they have less of an appetite. They would like to get rid of it on a slower pace. But I think we'll find the right equilibrium. I can tell you where President Trump is, where I am. I mean, he has no appetite for it at all. He wants to wipe it out entirely. We're going to get as close to that goal as possible.
Wind is a joke. We've got to get rid of this ridiculous reliance on wind energy. Trump's been 100%. Doing a great job in rolling back those permits and leasing. It's just, it ruins the environment. It ruins the landscape. It kills a bunch of animals that ought to be protected. It's killing whales.
It's not reliable.
It's a nightmare. Right. Okay. Let me move on, and I'll just ask you procedurally about the bill, and then I want to move on to Iran and some other issues. But is it going to pass? Are you guys going to stay now through the weekend? Because Trump is saying, don't go home. Like, no summer recess. You guys stick there. This is my presidency. Get it done. Is that happening?
Yes, the president and I talk about this multiple times every day, and he wants to get it done. We set an aggressive timetable for the reasons we've discussed, and we're going to get it done. He wants to have a signing ceremony on Independence Day. I mean, it would be epic. It'd be awesome. This would be the most consequential legislation that Congress has passed in generations. Truly, it's going to revolutionize everything that we care about and deliver on the agenda. So he wants to get it done. I will hold the members to account on that. And if the Senate does their job as expected by this weekend, we'll stay through and get this thing done. So as quickly as possible under the procedure, I have to let the bill procedurally, I have to let the bill lay over for 72 hours once it's delivered to us, obviously, so everyone can read it and go through it. And then we'll pass this thing. We're going to get it done, Megyn, for the people, and it's going to be a great day for everyone. And by the way, I just want to leave on this point before we leave the subject. This bill is written for and geared to lower and middle income families. It is the opposite of what the Democrats are saying. In fact, people who make more than $1 million are going to benefit the least from the tax policies here. It's geared for hardworking Americans. We're the party of hardworking Americans, and we will demonstrate that in what we do in our legislation.
So your prediction is President Trump will sign this thing on July 4th of this year?
That's my prediction and my prayer. We'll get it done as quickly as possible.
Okay, let's talk about Iran, because we've seen now in the past 24 hours leaks out of the Pentagon of what's been dubbed preliminary assessments on the intel of what our bombs did at these Iranian facilities, in particular Fort Al, the one that we were most targeting. And they are suggesting that while certain entranceways to the facility were damaged, that the program was not annihilated or obliterated, and that the Iranians could restart it within 1 to 2 months. The president's angry about this. So is Secretary Hegseth about these leaks, saying there's going to be a leak investigation. First of all, whoever leaked it went to Natasha Bertrand, who's been the same person saying the Hunter Biden laptop was disinformation and Russiagate. But the Pentagon's admitting that there is a document that says top secret that did have some sort of an assessment that looks like this in it. They're pointing out it was preliminary and they had low confidence in it. And the media is now running with this as though it's a final pronouncement on a failed operation by the bomber. So what is the truth, and what do you make of the controversy?
Look, we've seen this movie. You can dismiss all of that. This is low-level leakers who are always trying to undermine the Trump administration and undermine him and his achievements. And that's what this is. This is early assessments. They're unreliable. We're basically looking at satellite images. We obviously don't have people on the ground in these tunnels checking out what's happened, but we dropped the largest bombs ever known to man, short of a nuclear bomb, on this spot, and dropped it, in a small area the size of a air conditioner unit. It obviously did dramatic damage. It will set the program back, and you don't have to take our word for it. Take an independent national agency, the AIEA, or whatever it's called. Yeah, right. IAEA. I got so many acronyms here. But they said, of course it set it back. This is obvious. Now, we'll get more detailed intelligence, but I have had the classified briefings, Megyn, and I'll just tell you, short of revealing any of that, we have high confidence that we did serious damage and we set them back. The best evidence of that is Iran suddenly coming to the table and wanting to negotiate a peace deal. Okay. They would not be doing that if we had not hobbled them, right? We took out all of their top echelon of military officers and personnel. We took out all their nuclear scientists, the ones who were at the pinpoint, trying to deliver these dangerous weapons. And remember, that same international agency and our intelligence community determined that they were within days of being able to produce a nuclear weapon. They had enough 60% enriched uranium to develop 9 nuclear weapons within weeks, or at least one within 2 to 3 days. That's what the international agency said. This was an imminent danger. The president acted clearly within his constitutional authority, and he did the right, decisive thing for the people. That's why we elected Donald J. Trump. He's the leader to get it done, and he did.
Why would someone within the Pentagon be leaking that preliminary low confidence report to CNN?
Because, it's the swamp, right? It's the deep state, and it affects every agency, sadly, even the Pentagon. Now, I'll say on the other side of that coin, they kept this mission so secret that there were no leaks prior to the bombing, and that was a great blessing. I mean, that's a nod to our Secretary of State, our Secretary of Defense. I mean, the whole team, the cabinet, did an extraordinary job, and they kept that quiet. But now you have these people who are career bureaucrats, even in the Pentagon, who are really, frankly, a threat to the state because they're leaking information that is damaging to the administration. But it's false. I don't buy that. This is an early assessment. It will be further developed. And I'm telling you, we did enough damage to bring Iran hobbling on their knees, begging for a peace agreement. That was unforeseeable even a few weeks ago. So the job was done, mission accomplished. And by the way, hats off to the B-2 pilots and everyone involved in our unparalleled military who did the job that we're the only country in the world that could have done that because of their bravery and their sacrifice.
Are we on any sort of a slippery slope now that we've effectively admitted we will act militarily to stop Iran from getting a nuke? If they do start to rebuild right away within the next, say, it doesn't have to be 1 to 2 months, could be the next 12 months. I mean, are we now on a course of we're just going to have to keep sending our bombers over there because we've admitted that that's necessary?
I don't think so. I genuinely believe that this is going to solve the problem, at least for the foreseeable future. And as long as Donald J. Trump is in the White House. Why? Because he has sent a message. You see our allies at the NATO summit. I mean, it's like the Lion King, right? Donald Trump walks in and they all sort of bow again. America's back. And let me tell you something. A strong America is good for everyone around the world, and they all know it. And that is peace through strength. That is a policy that we have always believed in. And it's a core principle of the Republican Party. Donald J. Trump knows how to use it. They have to believe that you are capable. And we are. We are the most capable military in the world, the most capable military in the history of mankind. We don't want to use it. President Trump wants to be a peacetime president. He believes that. He doesn't want us to be involved in nation building and interventionalism and having wars around the globe. He wants to stop them. And every now and then you have to show that force is real. We did that. Everybody's on notice, and the terrorists and tyrants around the globe are terrified. That's the position we need them to be in.
You mentioned that the president had the authorization, all authorization he needed to conduct those strikes last Saturday. Not everybody agrees. As you know, even within the Republican caucus, Thomas Massie has suggested otherwise. Of course, AOC and others on the left are saying it's an impeachable offense. What about the War Powers Act? What about war authorization and Congress's role in being the ones that are supposed to declare war?
Listen, I'm a constitutional law attorney. You're an attorney. You and I have studied these things. I think we agree on it, Megyn. I'm not sure the War Powers Act is even constitutional. Okay, it was enacted by Congress 1973. The idea is that the commander in chief is supposed to inform Congress within 48 hours of a military action, and of course, that's kind of a moot point now in the age of 24-hour news cycles and social media. Everybody knows instantaneously what's happening, so it's almost moot. But then he can only act for 60 days until Congress either authorizes the action or declares war. Now, remember, we haven't declared war in Congress since World War II. There's been over 125 military operations by presidents of both parties in that intervening period. And by the way, all these Democrats who are howling right now never said a word when Barack Obama used the authority of Bill Clinton or Joe Biden and they dropped bombs in the Middle East. No one said a word. Suddenly Donald Trump does it. It's a gross constitutional violation. It's nonsense. If you go back to the original intent of the framers and read the Federalist Papers, Federalist 70, Alexander Hamilton, they spoke very clearly about the necessity of having a commander-in-chief that had the authority to act when there's imminent danger to the American people or our interests, our personnel. And President Trump used that authority, as have other presidents, and it's appropriate. This is exactly, I think, what the framers would have had in mind. Hey, could they have envisioned a scenario like this? They would have wanted the commander-in-chief to be able to act unilaterally, because if you waited on Congress to authorize it, we would dither over this for weeks or months. Iran would have a nuclear warhead by the time Congress acted, and I'm not sure we could deliver the votes. So,
well, they certainly would have had all the nuclear facilities emptied out. The ones that we knew about, they would have gotten all of the uranium removed from those facilities if we had to wait for a congressional debate. Nonetheless, forgive me for bringing her up, but you've got comments like this from Democrat Jasmine Crockett. Here it is.
And to understand enough about the Constitution to the extent that I'm the one that's supposed to make the fucking decision or at least get a vote.
What do you make of that? She's the one who gets to make the decision.
I certainly forgive you for showing it. I would like Jasmine Crockett to have the platform everywhere to talk all the time. She's the best gift to us possible. I want her to be the face of the Democratic Party. She and AOC can lead them into oblivion. That's fantastic. More Jasmine, okay? Because it puts on display what these people actually believe, where their party is headed. They have no leader. They have no platform that they can run on. All of their policies have been repudiated. All they have, they're a one-trick pony. All they can do is criticize Trump and the Republicans. And that's not going to sell, right? The reason we're going to make history and win the midterms and grow the majority in the House so we can do more of this good work is because we're going to demonstrate for all these new demographics of voters that came into our camp in 2024 that they made the right decision. They didn't come reluctantly, Megyn. We had a record number of Hispanic and Latino voters, Black and African-American voters, Jewish voters, union workers. They did not come to us reluctantly. They came with hopeful anticipation. Why? Because the woke, progressive, crazy left them behind. This is not your father's Democratic Party. And Jasmine Crockett is a perfect illustration of that. And I want to turn her microphone up. Let her talk every day. I want to bring her to the floor and just share her heart, because that helps us.
She's important. We want to hear from her.
So important. So important.
That Democrat Party you just talked about is on full display, sadly, in New York City today. Can you believe that this socialist Zoran, why am I forgetting his name? Because I don't know him. Yeah, Mamdani. Just won the Democratic nomination. I'm stunned. I've lived in New York for the past 17 years, minus the last 3. I can't believe even that Democrat Party has done this. What's your reaction?
Well, the best commentary was, I think Ron DeSantis and Florida leaders were trolling New Yorkers saying this is the best thing for property values in Palm Beach, Florida in history.
Yeah.
Because more New Yorkers are going to move to states that exercise common sense, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, and I hope they come to my state of Louisiana because it's madness in New York City. What's the problem there? I think these guys in AOC and those types, they figured out how to trigger these young, uninformed people using social media and these other avenues. And I guess a lot of common sense voters are not going to the polls. Well, this is dangerous stuff. And so this guy's now the nominee of the Democratic Party. He is an open anti-Semite socialist. They will destroy New York City. It is a nightmare. So, I mean, hey, go vote for Eric Adams. Like he's the best alternative now. He's going to be saving New York, right, from this madness. And I hope they don't do it for the sake of the biggest city.
We'd love it if it was Curtis Sliwa, but he's not going to get it because he's a Republican and New York doesn't vote Republican. So the next best option is Eric Adams. All right. Before you go, do you have a few minutes for me on what's happening with this rogue federal district court judge in Massachusetts. This is a crazy story. You point out you're a constitutional attorney, which is why I wanted to ask you about it in addition to your current role. So what happened? The long and the short of it is you've got this judge who Biden got on the bench in the waning days of his administration. He'd already lost. It was December 4th. And they got this guy confirmed, Brian Murphy. And of course, shopping for the right judge, the Democrats they filed a case in his forum to say the Trump administration should not be allowed to deport illegals to any country that they don't hail from, so-called third countries. So if I've got a guy from El Salvador, he's got to be deported back to El Salvador and you can't send him to Ghana. And the Trump administration had been doing that for various reasons. So this judge said, you're right, they can't do it. They can't do it without all sorts of due process being afforded to the already mandated deported illegals. It's not a question about whether they can be deported. It's a question about to where. So he said they can't do it, and I'm going to stay them from doing it, issuing an order staying them from doing it. Then the Trump administration subsequently deported 8 men without all the necessary due process, according to Brian Murphy. And he interfered and said, I said you can't do that. They said, all right, we're holding them in Djibouti before we actually get them to South Sudan, the ultimate destination. And he said, well, now you violated my order. So the Trump administration takes the appeal up to the First Circuit. They say, we side with him. We're going to leave the stay on your ability to do that in place. You're screwed, Trump administration. Trump administration takes it up to SCOTUS and says, this is crazy. You can't stop us from deporting people. SCOTUS agrees with Trump. SCOTUS says the stay is lifted. The case can play out on the merits, but while it does, they're free to deport these people to the third party. And then Judge Murphy comes back in and says, nope, I disagree. You cannot resume the deportations. And he says, because technically the DOJ didn't appeal my second order saying they had violated my now illegal stay. So it's kind of like what we saw with that Judge Boasberg in D.C., where the court said, you don't have jurisdiction to be interfering here, sir. And he held on to it anyway, saying, well, they violated my order, so I'm going to hold on to it just as long as possible with punishment. Only here the punishment this guy's trying to inflict is you have to abide by my now illegal order. That's your punishment. You cannot deport anybody. This is really dangerously unconstitutional. What are your thoughts?
Of course. I mean, look, Murphy and Boasberg are like the poster children for activist judges. This is exactly what the framers of the Constitution wanted to prevent. This is a violation of separation of powers. I mean, they're sort of trying to override the duly elected president, popularly elected president by the people. And it's completely out of control. I'm so grateful that elections do have consequences, and who sits on these benches and these seats is really important. And the Supreme Court, as a conservative majority, they've done the right thing here. But still, in defiance, effectively, of the Supreme Court, you have these federal district court judges acting like they're little kings. It's crazy. Look, we're trying to address this, and this is a serious crisis. I used to litigate constitutional law cases and high-profile stuff, 15, 20 years ago. I would run into activist judges on occasion, but I would just go get them overturned on appeal. These guys are really out of control, and the numbers are as well, it shows. In the last 100 years, Megyn, 67% of the national injunctions issued against a particular president have been issued against one president. His name's Donald Trump. And of those 67 injunctions, 90% of them were issued by the same small handful of activists where you pointed out people are venue shopping and trying to get into their courts because they know they'll do politics from the bench. And those are like obviously known Democrat operatives. So it's a crisis. We have passed legislation in the House called the No Rogue Rulings Act, which would rein in the ability of single individual activist judges from stopping an administration's policies. That's the right result, and that's sitting over in the Senate right now. But we've got to get control of this situation. I call upon, of course, also Chief Justice Roberts, because he does have some authority within the court system under Article 3 to rein in some of this nonsense. And if they don't, then Congress will take action. We have the ability to limit jurisdiction of courts. We can even eliminate the existence of whole courts, as you know, under the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And desperate times call for desperate measures. We got to get this thing under control.
How far would you go? I mean, they're appealing. Trump's doing the right thing, which is appealing this back up to the Supreme Court, saying, would you please tell the judge you meant what you said and possibly reassign him and give us a different judge since this guy's out of control, which we'll see what the Supreme Court does. But if the Supreme Court doesn't rein this judge, I mean, this one seems extreme. I don't run around saying this guy should be impeached and that judge should be impeached. Yeah, no, but is there any chance if this guy stays on this course, he might get impeached, Mr. Speaker?
Well, impeachment is a rare result. It's only happened 15 times in the history of the country where we've impeached a judge, and it's for high crimes and misdemeanors. I mean, the last guy was effectively like taking a cash bribe, while he was on the bench. So we believe in the rule of law. We're constrained because we're principled constitutional conservatives. We believe in the system. We're trying to ensure that those foundations are sustained, and we want to work within the system to do it the right way. So I applaud the president. He and I talk about all this all the time. He's going through the system. He's using an aggressive, effective Department of Justice that believes in the rule of law to try to get it corrected appropriately. But if failing that, I mean, Congress does have a role to play, and we'll have to look at that very carefully. But the damage that was done over the last 4 years, in particular with the Biden-Harris administration, the lawfare, the abuse of our system of justice, it diminished the people's faith in that system. You cannot maintain a constitutional republic unless people actually believe that justice is fair and that you have equal justice under law. It's etched into the marble above the door of the Supreme Court. If you don't have that, you lose a critical element of what it takes to keep a republic like ours. We're about to have our 250th anniversary as a nation. Megyn, we're still an experiment in self-governance. We don't know how long this grand experiment will last. It's the greatest in history, but we've got to maintain these critical foundations, and belief in the system of justice is probably paramount among them all.
Mm-hmm. And we're still waiting on the Supreme Court decision on whether these nationwide injunctions are being improperly used by the Democrats. Mr. Speaker, a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on, and good luck.
So great to be with you. Keep up the great work.